Hello and welcome to a new weekend edition of World Insight. I'm James Chow here in Beijing. As always, we bring you a half-hour program, and in that, we'll have Chinese analysis on world news. Thanks for joining us. Here's our first story. Well, here's how we begin. This week, US President Barack Obama went on his first official visit to Russia. Anticipation was understandably high, as Washington has vowed to reset relations. They've been strained by a number of issues over the past several years. So what change has Obama brought to Moscow, and what change is now in the process?
Barack Obama's first visit to Russia as US Commander-in-Chief on Monday. Interest was keen. Obama had previously given a less than flattering assessment of Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin.
I think Putin has one foot in the old ways of doing business and one foot in the new.
The following day, Putin rebuked Obama by saying, "We stand solidly on our own 2 feet and always look into the future." But when the two met for the first time at Putin's country home on Tuesday, there was no sign of discord. Instead, Obama spoke highly of Putin, though he stumbled over Putin's post.
I'm aware of not only the extraordinary work that you've done on behalf of the Russian people in your previous role as Prime Minister, as President, but in your current role as Prime Minister.
We've had periods where relations between our two countries flourished and other periods where they were quite gloomy. We link hope for development of relations with your name.
Putin treated Obama to a traditional Russian breakfast. That's not to say Obama's earlier meeting with President Dmitry Medvedev did not focus on more meaty issues.
We hope that as a result of our conversations, our fully fledged bilateral contacts, that we will close a number of difficult pages in Russian-American relations.
The two reached a deal to let US troops fly across Russia to fight in Afghanistan. They also signed a preliminary agreement to cut their nuclear arsenals by as much as a third. The deal sets the course for negotiators to replace the 1991 Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which expires in December.
The agreement to cut the number of deployed nuclear warheads on each side did not exceed expectations. Since the Cold War era, the two countries have a tradition of releasing their agreement from previous talks during the exchange visits of leaders. It only sets the outline for their future negotiations. Many details remain unsettled.
Settled or not, Obama says the US wants a strong partner.
America wants a strong, peaceful and prosperous Russia. This belief is rooted in our respect for the Russian people and a shared history between our nations that goes beyond competition.
Obama's positive tone has gained him some popularity in Moscow. His smile appears on Russia's famous souvenirs. And in one of Moscow's trendiest bars, everyone who repeats Obama's signature phrase can get drinks at half price.
Yes, we can.
In the center of Moscow, anyone could press a replica of the symbolic reset button for better relations. But has the mood turned into real optimism?
I think it's unlikely that relations will improve anytime soon. They will follow their course, we will follow ours.
It will never happen. Since the time of Khrushchev, when there was a Cold War, America gets involved in all the matters. Everything is its business.
The skepticism is common in Russia, where public opinion polls found that both Obama and the US are deeply distrusted. A poll released this week by worldpublicopinion.org shows only 12% of Russians saying the US treats Russia fairly. 75% say the US abuses its power to bend Russia to its will. Obama will have to overcome these ingrained beliefs if he's to truly reset relations.
We do not trust each other, unfortunately. The Russian side is not sure that it may go and cooperate with the US at full swing, because US may become one day unreliable. And the Americans have almost the same view of Russia.
Both U.S. and Russia expressed hope to mend their strained relations. But as many of their conflicts are deep-rooted, it depends on whether they can find pragmatic ways to reduce differences.
The deep mistrust between the US and Russia is decades old. The two were rival nuclear superpowers during the Cold War. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, relations experienced a brief honeymoon when Russian President Boris Yeltsin reached out to the West. From 1996, friction grew and the honeymoon ended when the US got involved over Chechnya. Tensions rose during and after the Kosovo War in 1999. The anti-terrorism war that began in 2001 brought some warmth in cooperation. But by the end of the Bush administration, US-Russian relations had reached their lowest point in decades.
After the Cold War era, except for the honeymoon period, U.S.-Russian relations were a combination of confrontation and cooperation. If we describe it as playing a game, the U.S. is the attacking side and Russia is in a defensive position. That's because the U.S. is the only superpower now. Although Russia is regaining its power in the past year, in the short term, its passive position won't change.
Analysts say 3 structural barriers impede US-Russian relations. The eastward expansion of NATO will continue despite Russia's strong backlash as it relates to the very existence of NATO as a functional organization. Georgia had its Rose Revolution in 2003, Ukraine its Orange Revolution in 2004. Color revolutions are part of the US strategy of promoting democracy in Central Asia. The goal is to turn former Soviet territories into partners. The US National Missile Defense Program is another key barrier. Russia strongly opposes US plans for missile shields in Eastern Europe, calling it a direct threat to its own security.
The U.S.'s national strategy toward Russia will remain the same no matter which party is in power. The 3 barriers relate to U.S. national interests, but it doesn't mean relations can't be improved. They could still find fields of cooperation.
When George W. Bush first met Putin, he says he looked into Putin's soul and concluded he could be trusted. Obama didn't say anything like that after his meeting with Medvedev and Putin. But his tenor in resetting relations raises high expectations. From words to deeds, it will be a long process to get Obama and Russian leaders singing the same song.
Well, Barack Obama has told his Russian host that their 2 countries are not destined to be antagonists. He says a great power doesn't show strength by dominating others. Well, those words went over well with many Russians, and while a good start doesn't necessarily spell a success in the long term, it surely opened up a window for the future. Coming up next, we'll talk about the logistics of democracy in Indonesia's elections.